Hello everybody, welcome back to Steve's Gear. Today we're going to do just a quick update video on the Fenix PD25R. So last week I carried this light all week for work. It's kind of the week that I do work at night, so it was a good time to test it. I typically only work 4, maybe 5 days a month at night. So it's always kind of fun to pick a new light to take out for the month. This month I obviously chose this one. I would say I worked about 67 hours. I know, cue the I remember my first job jokes. But of those hours, probably I would say at least 60% of it was at nighttime. Probably half of that time was outside, half it was inside. So I got a pretty good mixed use of using it. I live in kind of a city, a town, so there is ambient light. It's not pitch black like if I was out in the country or something like that, or in the woods. But I still needed a light. We'll go over a few pros and cons. I'll try to make it relatively quick. Pros, I like the weight. It's not the lightest light, but it's not super heavy. I'll use a few Olight references. If you're not familiar with Olight, I'm sorry, but typically when I work nights, a lot of times I'll carry the i5R, or I'll carry the Baton 3, or occasionally if I need a little extra juice, I'll carry the Baton 3 Pro. I would say this is fairly similar to the i5R. Baton 3 is obviously a little bit lighter, but it's also smaller, and then the Baton 3 Pro is heavier. So I would say a good chunk of my use is I use it on a hat. So the other pro is the clip works well, good retention. It does have that double style clip, so a lot of times I would use this part of the clip right here, and I would attach it to the top of my hat and use it kind of like headlamp style, and I would use it like that most of the time when I was outside. Inside I would use it more handheld style. It did withstand a drop. So first night I was using it, I dropped it from about 4 feet. I got these big sausage fingers, so I typically tend to drop stuff. And I'm also wearing gloves, not like big winter style gloves, but more kind of like nylon style gloves. I don't know if it's even really going to pick it up, but I did get a little nick there, and another little nick on the top. So I don't know if I really even pick it up too much. Not really any damage, just a few, kind of like scratches. So, but it didn't affect the lens. Everything seemed to work fine. That was the only little mark it got. It didn't get exposed to any water, so no problems with that. It wasn't extremely cold here this week. I think the coldest night that I worked, it was about 18 degrees. No problems whatsoever. As far as the cons go, the clip functions well, but I do find it slides around fairly easy. So these two kind of fit hand in hand. The other con is the button. So it uses the click to turn on and off, and then you use the mode selection for selecting modes. A lot of times I would try to have the clip basically directly under the mode selection button, so when it was clicked on my hat, I just had to reach up top and I knew where the button was at. The problem is a lot of times this clip slides pretty easy, putting it on and off the hat or whatever, and I would find myself, putting it on and then reaching up and trying to hit this button. It doesn't really have any texture. It's kind of hard to tell the difference of where that button is when you're wearing gloves and when it's dark out. So that was kind of one of probably my biggest con was just that button. If you were using it in your hand, carrying it on the inside, obviously easy to find. You could just carry it with your finger on the button if you wanted to. So I would think probably that's the thing I had the biggest issue with. Battery life. Battery life isn't bad. Most of the time, when I would use it off and on for most of the night, I did get down to towards the end of the battery life. So when you turn it on, you get a little green indicator, or a LED indicator, I should say. If it's solid green, you're looking at 85 to 100%. If it flashes green, you're looking at 50% to 85%. If it's a red light solid, you're looking at 25 to 50%. And if it's flashing red, you're looking at 1% to 25%. Now, normally at the end of the night, when I got done using it, it was flashing red. So I'm looking at probably under 25% battery life at the end of the night. Now, it did its job. I mean, it got me through the night. But if it was something you're going to use, you wanted to use multiple nights, you're probably not going to be able to unless you have really light usage. I did run the light a lot on, I would say, medium to turbo, with probably a good mix of mostly high mode. So, if you're only using, the low mode most of the time, you're probably going to get better battery. But for me, I ended up using that high mode quite a bit. Charging it was just fine. I did get spoiled by a lot of that magnetic charging through light, but, easy to plug in a USB-C cord, plug it in before I went to bed, woke up fully charged. Threads are working fine. Never had a problem with this slipping down at all. It kind of snugs in there pretty tight when you close it up. That O-ring kind of helps keep it closed. Never had to use the battery. Never had to open the battery. If you didn't watch the initial review or you're not familiar with it, this light uses a 700 milliamp hour battery. So not a huge capacity. The benefit is, though, is if you didn't have a place to charge it and you had an extra CR123, you could just throw it in there and use it just like normal. So I don't have any CR123s, but you could use one. And obviously you can pick up extra batteries on the website if you wanted to carry, a spare backup. Another thing that was kind of interesting was the beam pattern. So this light has that higher candela rating than some of the lights that I typically use. The other ones that I mentioned I use at night. So the beam pattern is very focused and very intense in the center. Not a ton of spillover outside of that beam pattern, so I found myself, if I was using it like headlamp style, aiming my head a lot more towards where I was walking, versus some of the other lights with more flood. I'd be able to just kind of turn it on, and I felt like I had a little bit more flood for walking up close, kind of watching your feet. If you're walking around the building that has, say, tall grass around the outside of it or whatnot, you're kind of keeping an eye out for, gopher holes or rocks or whatever. I found myself kind of looking down and looking around to kind of illuminate my feet a little bit more. Now, it's also a pro, though, because occasionally I'll look at stuff like on the roof lines, say 25, 30 feet, 40 feet in the air, whatever, and you bump it up to that turbo mode, you get that really intense beam. You can really, really look at a spot real close, and it's nice and bright and clear, versus the flood, you don't see that spot as well. So I could see where it would come in handy. The light is definitely on the cooler side as far as the light goes. So if you like cooler lights, that's great. I even kind of noticed a slight green tint to it when I was working. I'll kind of see if I can demonstrate a little bit. We'll dip it down a little bit. So this is the light on, let's see, I think it's on the high mode. Yeah, it was on high. So that's on the high mode. You can kind of see that intense beam spot. Not a lot of throw on the outside of it. Obviously it illuminates some, but not as much. Just for comparison's sake, I'll kind of bring in this newer 4.7s light I have, and you can see that it is a warmer light versus the cooler light, and then the beam isn't quite as intense, but I think it has pros and cons for how you're going to use it. It's just something to kind of be aware of. But yeah, if you're looking for something where you're going to use for a lot of hours at night, you may want to step up to, a larger size of this style of light. I think it'd be great for something to, if you were keeping in your vehicle or walking along at night and you were, saying looking for tracks or something like that, you're going to get that better beam spot. So those are just some of the things I noticed. Overall, I'm still happy with the purchase. Definitely something that I'll keep in the arsenal. Next month, next month at the end of the month when I'm doing some night stuff, I will use a different light Maybe we'll test out something different. But yeah, if you have this light, feel free to write in the comments what you think. If you have any pros and cons, maybe you have a quicker way of identifying the button, or a different way of using the clip that I didn't think of, feel free to write it below. But yeah, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching.